Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus, and as you can see today I'm starting my playthrough of Yggdrasil, a game that was on my grey list for quite a while. Then a couple of years back Ludonaut decided to provide or bring out a reprint of the copy that also did include the, I think even more in demand, Asgard expansion for this game. Since then, game again did vanish. They did release the Chronicles version of Yggdrasil with this massive 3D Yggdrasil. Didn't really check this one out, but every now and then I am putting out this original gem here, Yggdrasil, and give it a spin. Used to play it with my son various times. I think we always played it on the very easy mode, and even there we really get a lot of beating actually. So it's not an easy game. It's a cooperative game, in case you are wondering and in case you don't know. And the idea is to get through this stack of 42 enemy cards. I believe I have not added any of the Ragnarok cards, but I did basically shuffle in 2 of the more advanced gods or enemies in that deck. So you always have 42 cards unless you are playing with Ragnarok, and I think you are adding cards. And again, this is the timer of the game. You want to make it through the deck, and if you're still standing when you run out of these cards, then you have ultimately won the game. And there are a lot of ways how you can lose, of course. It's a proper cooperative game after all. And yeah, we are losing the game if 5 of these enemies make it over this line here. So we already see that here. So the game, in respect to, let's say, what's printed on the board, it's really extremely helpful. Not all of the icons are ultra clear, but once you get those, then yeah, you understand what they mean. We are also losing if any 3 of the enemies will make past it this threshold here, or if 1 makes it to Odin's residence, I believe, here to the far side of the board. Then we have also lost the game at the end of that god's turn. So we still have basically the entirety of usually 3 actions where we could, for example, try to push anyone who made it into Odin's residence back 1 space, and then we might still be alive. The game plays, I believe, 1 to 6 players. The more you add, the more difficult it gets. And ultimately I decided to play with 3 gods after all. So we have Thor, we have Freya, and we have Tyr. All of these gods come with, let's call it, active ability, but they can also move into a trance-like state for an action. They can flip over to the other side, and in this case, everyone else, and usually also themselves, there are some exceptions to that, gets another ability here. While you are in trance, though, you can't take the so-called Asgard action, so you can't fight the enemies. You can do all kind of other stuff, so it's really not bad moving into trance, but that's definitely something for the more expert level play. And if you are watching my playthroughs, don't expect any expert level play here. So I might really be missing out on these trance-like abilities. And that was the main reason why I did not decide to go with just 2 gods, which I think is a little bit easier. But in this 3-player game, at least there is a chance we might be sending off one of these gods into a trance-like state to benefit all of the other gods. With that being said, and as usual, I will explain the game as I go. Before we get started, a huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members. You are truly stars. Can't tell you how much I appreciate all your support. So if you want to support my little channel, you will find a link to my Patreon. Click there's a join button for joining me directly on YouTube, or there's a thanks button for leaving a donation. Definitely like and subscribe, leave a comment, really appreciate that as well. And I think with that being said, we should be pretty much good to go. I have already prepared the game board. The only player dependent thing that you have to do is, I believe, in respect to these elves up here. You always have basically number of players plus 1 elves available to you. Everything else is more or less independent. Again, in respect to staging the enemy deck here, there is something that you can do to make it not really easier. There's a basic level and easy level, and then you can make it progressively more difficult. So again, I'm going for a not really medium difficulty, but not the totally easy ones. Again, I have exchanged 2 of these cards for their more powerful alternatives, that is. We will be starting with Thor over here. His active power basically gives him +1 fighting capability. Makes kind of sense. So anyone he's fighting, he gets +1. Can be extremely helpful when we are fighting some of these frost giants. But again, we come to that. His passive ability here says that all frost giants' strength is reduced by 1. Normally they have a strength of 3. In this case, they only would have a strength of 2. And this also counts for him as well. Thor, even though he's in trance, can still go after the frost giants himself. But all the others can do that too and would gain the benefit here. So that's extremely helpful if we have to deal with a lot of these frost giants that typically Loki brings out. But okay, first things first, the first thing that you always do, and we have to flip back to our active side here, we will have to draw our very first enemy card. That's the first thing that you always do during your turn. And here we have Nidhogg. So first of all, we are moving Nidhogg, the marker, 1 space further. Several things will happen now. So now we see they have a power rating of 1. So once we're making it into these different thresholds, their power level will increase. And they also, basically now it makes sense start to fighting them, because right now he would have been a defense value of 5. So we have to come up with 5 fighting power in order to take him out, which means moving this marker 1 step back. The thing now really is he comes with a special ability down here, which is independent of the current power level. So it doesn't matter if he's here, there or there. We have to move the enemy that's furthest to the left 1 step further, and in the case of a tie we get to choose. And here I really don't know the game well enough actually to make an informed decision, but I think we want to go for Jörmungand, moving them back for 1 step further, because the power of Jörmungand is also not dependent on the power level, and I think this kind of makes sense. But we have already moved 2 of these markers ahead, but this is already the first enemy card done, so we are already 1/42th on our way to victory. Hooray! And these cards never come back as far as I remember. And now Thor gets to take 3 actions. The whole board consists of actions, so these are basically locations where the gods travel to, and then they are taking their action. You can only take these actions once each turn, so I can't do the same action twice. Other than Freya, she is allowed to take 2 of her 3 actions the same basically, which is extremely powerful. So she could, for example, move into trance, use it and then move back. So this can be extremely powerful actually, or the other way around. Because Thor is a good fighter on himself, I think we want to take his very first action. I'm using this die here, so we're moving this down to a 2 to move the sacred land marker. So the Vanir moves 1 space ahead. So you here on this track you have 2 choices. You can either advance the Vanir marker 1 space ahead, or you can use the power basically on the same level or a level before, and then you have to reset the track. So I think again for Thor we have to do some preparational actions here, and I will come to what those are. This action here, for example, would allow you to move the Valkyries 1 step to the left or to the right. The next one would give you Vikings, which you would need to fight, obviously. But this was the very first action. Again, we can't take the same action again. I don't think that Thor wants to go for the support of elves, because he has a +1 during fights anyway, so he may want to leave the elves to the other players, at least for now. For his second action, we want to visit Midgard here, which allows us to move the Valkyrie marker 1 space to the left or to the right. In this case, they start here on the rainbow space. We have to move them 1 space to the right. Now, if we want, we can now take up to 3 tokens from the corresponding bag, in this case the white bag, and pull out 3 tokens. In that bag there are fire giants, I believe, and Vikings. And the white one is the worst for us. It's 12 fire giants and 6 Vikings, and you don't really want to have those, of course. You want Vikings. Now we could again pull out 3 of those tokens, and any Vikings we would be allowed to keep. All the fire giants we would move would have to go back. So maybe there is something else we want to do first, and I think I do. We could visit the Fire Island, or the Kingdom of Fire here first. This would allow us to pull 5 tokens out of the bag, and any fire giant we would be drawing would be sent here to the corresponding deck. So I think in this case let's do that instead. So let's give me this little mulligan, let's call it like this. So we are taking the second action here at the Kingdom of Fire. We are pulling out 5 tokens. The bags are unfortunately a little bit too small for my big hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, I think this wasn't terrible. The spread on this bag again is 12 to 6, I believe. So we have increased the odds pulling out, let's say, Vikings from that bag quite dramatically. The rules say you are allowed to look into the insides of the bag, but they also tell you the more often you do that, the easier the game will get. So if you really want to celebrate a true victory as a Viking warrior, then the less you look into the bag. And now for the third and last action, we could really consider to do this now, to visit Midgard, to send the Valkyries one space to the right. And now we could be pulling out 3 of the tokens from that bag just to do some preparations, and also makes the, let's say, the thing for the other players, let's say, more interesting, because another player could now send someone to the blue island here, where the odds are getting increasingly better in respect how those bags are being seeded. So you see white, blue, green and black. The further down you go here, the more Vikings you have, the more fighting power you can pull out of those. That's why you want to move the Valkyries as far as possible in order to leverage those. But for now, they are here on the white island. And again, Odin gets to choose if he wants to pull out Vikings there or not. And I'm not sure if I want to do that, quite honestly, because again, when you are taking this action now, every fire giant is unfortunately not sent back to the Kingdom of Fire, but sent back to the bag directly. And maybe to make things more interesting for the other players, it could be the better deal actually to not pull them out. Again, he gets a +1 on, let's say, fighting star of folks anyway, but a +1 is not really huge. So in order to come up or to defeat a frost giant, you need at least 3 fighting power anyway. And the die that you would be rolling comes with up to 3 though, but that's basically like rolling a 6, right? So yeah, let's do that. I think we need some fighting power. So we are pulling out 3 of those tokens. 1, 2, 3. Okay, here's 1 and 1 and 2. Okay. He was able to recruit 1 Viking, the other 2 go back to the bag, so he has 1 fighting power plus the 1, so he has a +2 already, which isn't terrible actually, if one of these pesky frost giants is coming out. But that's basically the end of Thor's turn. We are moving over to Freya. Again, her special ability allows her to take a action twice basically during her turn. And her trance state says that only half of the Vikings that you commit to a combat are basically sent to the underworld, I believe that's being called, and the rest goes to her. That's pretty huge actually, if you really want to do some power control. So I really quite like her special or trance ability here. But first of all, she has to draw her enemy card, and here we have Surt. Surt is really a pesky one because Surt is adding more fire giants to the respective bag. So what happens now? We are rolling a die, and where is my dice tower? I have to go for this one here. Unfortunately, can't quite find my Lego dice tower. So let's see. Okay, so we are now sending 1. No, first of all, he's moving, of course. That's the first thing that we forgot, because if first move because they need the power, basically. Now he has power, and based on the current power, he's adding that many fire giants to the respective bag that we have rolled. In this case, we have rolled the black, which means we are adding this to the black. Black is still pretty much okay. I think it's 3, now it's 4 fire giants versus 15 Vikings or so. I think the black bag is still pretty much safe, but that's basically already this thing done. Now she can take her 3 actions, and I believe she also needs some fighting power. So she will use the Midgard action here once to move the Valkyries 1 space further. Now we are looking into the blue bag. The blue bag is slightly better than the white bag, so let's have a look. We are still pulling out 3 tokens. Oh, okay, that's not too bad. So this one goes back, unfortunately, but she now has found or recruited 2 mighty Viking warriors. Because she's Freya and she's awesome, she can take the same action a second time. So in theory, she could do the same thing here to the green bag, and I think that's what she's going to do. She's moving over here, so that's her second action. She can only take her special ability basically once per turn, so she can't take the same action 3 times. But now we are looking into the green bag, which is even more awesome. So she's pulling out 3 tokens. Okay, 1. Okay, overall she has found the help of 4 Vikings this round so far. Nicely done. The fire giant goes back into the respective bag, and then for her last action I am either visiting the dwarves, which would allow me to give her one of these artifacts. I believe that we have to start with a level 1 artifact, and there is an artifact in the deck for each of the 6 enemies, but unfortunately not for the frost giants. So you have to fight the frost giants without a specialized weapon. Or I go visit an elf, because the elves are basically the same as Vikings but more awesome, because you can spend elves after you have rolled. So I think let's totally do that. So I think overall her fighting power is pretty impressive now. She didn't fight though, but I think we will get there. We need some more preparation or turn. I'm relatively certain a lot of you know the game much better than I do already, are shaking their heads today. You should have done this or that, for example, maybe really going after one of those artifacts as soon as possible. But yeah, that's me. I totally suck at these kind of games. But this was her last action. Heading over to Tyr. Tyr, basically his special ability allows him to reroll any die he has to roll once at least. So I think overall that is pretty impressive stuff. Okay, first of all, he also has to draw an enemy card. So we have already... Ooh, Needhug moves again. So we are moving her here. And again, we have to choose one of those that are behind and have to move one further. Fenrir, I believe, is one of the worst, quite honestly. But Loki and Hell are also as bad, actually, because she's actually removing Vikings from the game for good, which is truly terrible. Loki adds Frost Giants, but Frost Giants is something we can deal with, and Frost Giants also help us because they give us, let's say, special powers if we defeat enough of them. So I think I am considering to move Loki one step ahead. Might be again a terrible mistake, but we have resolved the third card already. 30 more rounds to come, or 34 turns to come. And I believe it's time for his first action. So Tyr is taking his first turn to go visit the dwarves and go for an artifact. And ultimately, I think I want something to fight. Who have we moved? Loki. Loki, I really want to... Hofund, I want to hand over to Thor. For whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe we should give... No, that's okay. Let's hand Hofund over to Tyr, so he now has a level 1 item. During his next turn, we can't take the same action twice. He could go to the dwarves again and upgrade Hofund to the level 2. Then the level 1 would go back to the deck, and another player could go for a level 1 instead. So several players could have several artifacts in their hand, but they have to be of a different level, because there's only 1 level of each of those artifacts here in the deck, right? So I think that's an okay start. So whenever he is fighting Loki now, he gets a +1, which isn't terrible. For his second action, I believe he's also going to Midgard for now. Yeah, maybe let's do that. On the other hand, we could also visit the underworld here, basically, to put in 5 tokens into 1 bag, actually. And here I'm somewhat inclined to take those 5. Yeah, it's exactly 5. And maybe put those into the blue bag here, or the white bag. Depends a little bit. Maybe the blue, but I think blue is actually twice on this die. White is twice on this die. So maybe we want to put it into the green bag there instead. But green is already pretty cool. We have pulled out 2 of those. I think there were 12 in there. So I think I want to increase the odds of one that's not so great. So let's stick to the plan. I will add them into the blue bag here. So this was his second turn or second action done. And for his last action, I believe I want to send Tyr into his trance stake. So state. He can no longer take the Asgard action, which again means he can no longer fight the enemies, but he can fight anyone else. But while he is in trance, you have to spend the Vikings for your combat after you die roll. So they basically turn into elves. Let's put it like this. So I guess this is extremely powerful for your, let's say, token control. But that's already the end of the turn, end of the first full round. There are no real game rounds in this game. The game simply keeps going until, yeah, the game end is being triggered. So let's move over to Thor. We have to... Gosh, are you kidding me? I really shuffled the heck out of this deck. So we have to move Nidhogg one step further. Ugh, that is really brutal. And either Fenrir or Hel have to move one step ahead. And I think in this case, let's go for Hel instead in this case. For no apparent reason right now. Yeah, let's do that. So we are sending this card back. We already have resolved 4 of those, but yeah, we are already moving like crazy. Again, if these fellas will move 2 more spaces each, with this one we have already lost the game, right? Don't forget that. Okay. Maybe let's allow me one mulligan. I think I wanted, instead of Hel, I wanted to move Fenrir further. Yeah, let's do that instead. Because for Thor's first action, that was my plan actually. I want to visit the dwarves and he wants Gleipnir, I think the chain, to put Fenrir on a chain basically. So he has now a +1 against Fenrir, plus the 1 here, and in theory we have another +1 here from this Viking warrior that he was pulling out. In order to defeat Fenrir though, we have to come up with 5 attack points basically. Again, 2 we already have pre-printed on our board and with our card. This one is a potential +1 if we want to spend it, so we would need to roll at least a 2 on this die. And yeah, the majority of those are either blanks or 1s. I think there are, yeah, there's 1 2 and 1 3 basically on this die. And you know, if you know my channel, how good or bad I'm rolling these dice, right? I think that may not be my best bet right now. Maybe we want to prep. Nidhogg is even more difficult to beat because we have to come up with 6 in order to defeat her. And her power right now, power level is 2, but the good thing is her special ability isn't dependent on the power level, which is why I think having these fellas further down, further up the line is not that big of a deal. If Fenrir would be moving over this line, or Loki or Hel for example, that's definitely bad. But yeah, anyway, we still have 2 more actions left, so we might want to consider to do more prep work. So we are visiting the sacred land and moving the Vanir 1 step further. Again, you can either move him ahead or use the power and send him back to the first space. And then there is 1 more action left for Thor. When should I start killing or fighting those fellas actually? I really don't know. Let's move to Midgard. So we will move the Valkyries. I will draw out now tokens from the blue bag because we have just added more tokens in there. So we are pulling out 3 tokens. That wasn't terrible. 2 more Vikings for Thor, but I think that's already the end of his turn done. Yeah, back to Freya, and I think she will have to fight this round. She has a good amount of Vikings with her. We have the elf, but of course right now with Tyr's ability the Vikings are basically elves. But yeah, let's see the first card. Okay, Jörmungand is moving ahead, which right now is okay, but I think now it's the time actually to start fighting those fella when they are on the second space, because you want to hinder them to move into the next space. If you would fight this fella here with his next card, we would be moving right back, right? That's at least how I think about this. The special ability of Jörmungand, though, is that we have to send the Valkyries back to the Rainbow Island here, and then we have to roll the die, and depending on the roll, we will then have to move the water marker here to the respective island, right? So let's see that. Okay, that's the green island, which means we are moving the token on here. The Valkyries could still move onto this space and could move to the black island, which is nice. The black back is the best one for us. But while the Valkyries are on this one here, we can't really scout or recruit any Vikings. So that's definitely a problem. And there are also frost giants in the deck. So far we haven't seen any of those, who will then flip this to the other side, and then it's a water pool basically, and then we can't do anything here. That's really bad. So right now the island is blocked per se, but at least the Valkyries can still move over it. So there is a chance now we could make it here to the Black Island. But okay, for her first action, I believe we will also visit the dwarves. We want some fighting power, right? We want the artifact. And the best thing to fight Jörmungand is Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. We will handing it over to Freya, who's, I believe, the first of the Valkyries. So we are handing Mjolnir over to her, because she's going to fight Jörmungand in a second, and I think that will be her second action right away. She could, because she can take the same action twice. She will immediately upgrade Mjolnir to the second level, so Mjolnir could still be handed over to Thor if he wants to, but now she has a +2 because again she can take the same action twice. I think that worked out okay for her. And now finally we are going to see our very first fight with the Asgard action. Normally you would have now to assign any amount of Vikings that you have at your disposal before you're rolling that. Of course you have to nominate your opponent. In this case again we will go for Jörmungand because Tyr's power is in effect. This allows her basically to spend Vikings after we have rolled the dice. Extremely powerful in my mind. So in this case we are now rolling the die. Again we have a +2 built in basically, so we need to still come up with to a 5. So if we're rolling now a white, which is an empty one, and this was the 3 of course, but of course it doesn't count, then we are really in a bad shape. But let's see. That's a 1. Okay, not totally whiffed it, but we have now 3. So in order to make, I think I am going to spend 2 of these Vikings, because her special power is not active yet. She doesn't get those unfortunately, but these fellas will now move directly into the world of dead, but because we were successful, Jörmungand is moving 1 step back. This is how you do enemy control, and I think this was her final action of this round. Nicely done, Freya. Way to go. Over to Tyr. That's a good thing. Before you make any decisions, you have to see what fate has in stock for you. Okay, Hell is moving 1 step further. They're now all active basically, but this had to happen anyway. And the number up here basically, not sure if you see that quite well. It's not a real number. I mean, it's a number of lines basically. This is one of the basic cards. Again, we have 2 cards in the deck which have replaced their basic enemies, which would then basically move this marker twice. So you would see 2 lines. So that's what we have done. And now we are also rolling the die. And oh, that's good because this is Tyr actually. So we get to reroll. No, his active power is not in effect, of course, because he's in trance. So no reroll for him. But anyway, we still have to roll that die. Her power is currently 1. So we are looking at this 1 lightning symbol here, which means we now have to pull out 1 Viking from the green bag. And again, we have to fish it out. There's no randomness. This Viking is removed from the game for good, never to return. So we have just lost a Viking for good, but this has resolved the card here respectively. And I must say the game is extremely fun. I really enjoy what I'm doing here, even though I don't have a clue. But okay, for his first action we will upgrade Hofund to level 2. So the level 1 card goes back here to the stack. So someone else could get that, but he now has a +2 against Loki. Right now he's in trance. He can't really attack anyone at Asgard. Again, he can still go after frost giants. But that's his first action done. For his second action, I think we really need to draw some more Vikings because he's really not strong right now. So we may want to start moving the Valkyries 1 step further again. Again, they had been sent back by, was it Jörmungand? I think so. Now we get to pull 3 tokens here from the white bag. Maybe I should have added the Vikings in there actually. Ooh, okay. Okay, that wasn't terrible at all, but of course this bag now really looks awful, of course. But at least he was able to engage, or yeah, hire 2 of these Viking warriors. Nicely done, Tyr. We still have 1 more action left. He upgraded, and yeah, he has moved the Valkyries. But I believe for his 3rd action, he's going to visit the Sacred Land, moving them 1 step further. With this action here, so if we would now trigger this one here with the next action, for example, Thor, we could look at the top 6 cards of the enemy deck and rearrange them in any way we see fit. The next one is really extremely powerful because this would allow us to move any one of the enemies 1 step further. This is truly huge, and the last space allows us to discard a giant of our choice from the deck or face down. It's face up one. I think this is a really powerful one. No, it comes from the giant pile actually. Yeah, without fighting it. But okay, back to Thor. Let's draw and reveal the next enemy card. Oh, Hell is moving again. So I think we have to do something about that. At least I think. We haven't moved Tyr back to the active side. No, we can't still use his special power, which is huge. But we still have to roll the die. The good thing is she's still on the 1st power level here. The next time she's moving, she would be discarding, removing 2 Vikings from the respective bag. So this is truly horrible. So let's, oh, that's from the white bag. It's still 1, but the white bag is already pretty bad, actually. There's still Vikings in there. Yeah, there is still 1. Okay, so when you look at this bag here, this is pretty rad, right? We don't want to pull any more out of those. But yeah, 1 more Viking gone. And I think we have to do something about Hel, because I really don't want her to move into the next tier here, where she would be removing 2 Vikings per activation. So I think for Thor, yeah, I think Thor has to do this actually. He will visit the dwarves again, and in order to defeat Hel, we need Draupnir, which gives him a +1 against Hel here respectively. Okay, that was his very first action done. I believe next he also now wants to visit the elves, so he's taking the support of 1 of these elves. So he has 4 tokens in his stock +2, so he should be able to move Hel back 1 space. Again, we don't have to commit any Vikings because of Tyr's awesome trans power here. So we are simply rolling the die again after her. Still a 1. So let's make the math here. So we need to come up with 5. We have rolled a 1. So 1 + 1 + 1, that's 3. So we have to discard. And I think I want to discard the Vikings now to send them to the world of the dead, because then the action is getting more powerful down here. I mean, with this action you can move up to 5 of these tokens into 1 of these bags, and right now we would be missing out of 1 of those. So the more we add here, the better, I believe. But of course, this was another successful attack on 1 of those enemies, so we have to send, or we can move her back 1 space, but those were all of his 3 actions, unfortunately, already. Moving over to Freya. We are, oh yeah, Fenris is truly bad. Yeah, we have to do something, but oh, Thor has the level 1 Gleipnir. Okay, that is bad. I think we have to do something about that. So first of all, we are moving Fenris further. He doesn't do, oh no, I see that now. We have really shuffled in the special card for Fenrir. I already forgot that. Oh, that is bad. So he's moving twice. So if I would have remembered that, I wouldn't have moved Fenrir earlier on. Okay, he's now already in here, which means 3 more enemies over this threshold. We have lost the game. But the main problem here with Fenrir is that he will hinder our actions from all the gods. So while this card now stays in effect, you have to spend 1 of your actions in order to tame him, I believe. That's what they refer to. And depending on his power level, you have to roll a certain result. So on 1st level, he would be basically still here. But on the 2nd level, our chances already have decreased dramatically to some extent, actually. No, I think green only by 1 pip, basically. So we still have a 2/3 of a chance, but we can blow through all of our actions, basically before we get to take a normal action here. So this was really not great. So let's move the card over here so that we don't forget. And now she could take her 2 actions, her 3 actions, but before we do, we have to spend actions to tame him. So yeah, let's do that. So the first action, so she starts at 3, moving down to 2. And again, we are looking for a white or a blue result now to tame him. And that was white. Okay, but this already cost us our very first action this round. So really, Fenrir is a very, very nasty fella. And in order to defeat him now, we have to come up with 6 points. And then we would be moving him back. And the next time he's activating, actually, he would be back here anyway. So that really didn't work out at all, actually. Okay, that was terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. There might still be something we could do, actually. So I believe for her second action already, we are moving the Vanir marker 1 step further. With her last action, she could do the same thing again, either moving it 1 step further or maybe triggering it and then move Fenrir down below the line, but then she can't take an attack action. So maybe this is something that then Tyr could be doing in order to prepare that for Thor, or Thor does it for its own, basically. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, she still has 1 more action left though. So maybe let's move the Valkyrie. So we are visiting Midgard and drawing 3 tokens from the blue bag here respectively. Okay, that's not great. It's better. And last but not least are these small bags. Oh, that was not great. So she was only able to get 1 more Viking out of the bag, but this was her final action. Not great. Over to Tyr. We have to reveal... You must be joking. So Fenrir is moving 1 step further here. Right now, that is still very much okay, actually. So now we might really have a reason to push him back 1 space so that he's not moving into the next space, because then basically we have to roll, I think it's 1/3. So when he's on the 3rd level, he's really getting extremely difficult to deal with, actually. So yeah, we have to put this onto Tyr's board. He has 3 actions, but again, we have to use actions now in order to tame Fenrir. So let's roll the die. That's white. Okay, still we dodged the bullet somehow. And now I'm really inclined for his second action to use the sacred place to reset this, and this allows us to move any one of those enemies 1 step back. I think that I really need to make sure that Fenrir is not making it into the 3rd threshold here. Yeah, no, let's not do that. And then I think let's do another preparational thing. Let's visit the dwarves, and in this case we will draw the level 1 Gungnir, which would give us a +1 against, well, I forget what those are referred to. Oh gosh, is it Jörmungand? No, Nidhögg, of course, the green fella. Yeah, and then we would be moving back to Thor, actually, but I think for today I will call it. So I will give you some room, sending in your suggestions, making me aware of any goofs that I'm relatively certain have done. Let me know what you think. Maybe also share your strategy in case, or your ideas in case you have any. I really need all the help I can get in this one here. So what should Thor be doing with his next turn? And I'm really curious to hear what you think about this game. With that being said, hope to see you soon in one of my next videos, and until then, bye bye.